My pleasure to introduce you to my dear friend, my amazing colleague, Beth Eakman, yes, we love Beth. Beth's essays have appeared in a wide variety of publications, including Brainchild Magazine, New York Family Magazine, and the late lamented AustinMama.com. Beth Eakman is working on a memoir and lives with her husband here in Austin, where she has taught writing at St. Edward's since 2006. Please welcome Beth.
Thank you. Such a nice introduction. Thank you for coming. What I'm going to read tonight is a highly abridged version of an essay that originally appeared in Brainchild magazine. It's also a part of the first chapter of my memoir. The Brainchild editors called it Supermom, but I've always called it The Cat Story. Here's the setup. In the early 2000s, my family and I had recently relocated from San Diego to Austin, and things weren't great. I was having trouble making friends in our new neighborhood, and my now ex-husband was increasingly distant. So without further ado, on a miserably hot 4th of July morning in suburban Austin, Texas, something profoundly weird was indeed happening in my front yard. Ted had attempted twice to call my attention to this, but I was pretending not to hear him. I was peeling a sodden swim diaper off of 9-month-old Sam and trying to keep an eye on my 2-year-old daughter, who was streaking through the house on slippery feet. I cursed the degree to which the weather controlled my life since leaving California. Determined not to cower indoors with a near psychotically bored husband, I had performed the small act of heroism that was hauling the Smalls and all of their gear to the pool. We'd just finished the ordeal of sunscreen when an unsupervised toddler vomited in the water. The teenage lifeguard looked suspiciously relieved to be clearing the pool and hanging the closed sign. "Hey, really, you better come see this," Ted said under his breath. "There's some kids in our front yard." I don't see how kids in the front yard constitutes an emergency. There's some kind of like children of the corn shit going on. Okay, that was novel. Ted had his back to me and was pressed against the wall to the left of the big front window. I walked over to the window. The part of my brain that makes sense of visual stimuli cranked to a halt. The neighborhood's 7-year-old ne'er-do-well, Liam, maybe, was standing spookily still in the front yard under the big live oak, staring at the west side of the house. Wrapped around his hands and stretched for about 2 feet in front of his chest was a length of saran wrap, which he was holding taut, like a mafia thug about to deploy a hit. Liam was flanked by a semi-triangular formation of about 6 other kids that I recognized from our street. But Liam was the only one whose lack of supervision and notably bad behavior made his name memorable. One little girl brandished half a shoebox and a pair of salad tongs. A boy held a hockey stick, and another had something that looked like a large fishnet. The rest wielded various combinations of sticks, rakes, and shovels. All were just as still as Liam, gazing silently in the same direction, barely breathing. Low-hanging gray-green clouds cast an eerie light on the scene. Whoa, now I was whispering too. 10-4 on the horror flick vibe. I thought you were employing some artistic license. I am not capable of making this shit up. I handed Ted the baby and slipped out the front door, still in my navy one-piece from the morning's failed pool outing. "What you doing with that plastic grab there, Liam?" I hoped his name was Liam. "There's a dead cat in your side yard," he said without shifting his gaze. Even with no wind and from around the corner of the house, the smell of a carcass decomposing in 95-degree heat and 90% humidity confirmed it. The kid's face was sweaty red behind brown freckles. "I think it's Fiona." He brightened. "Do you think your dog killed her?" Well, Liam, I felt increasingly confident that this was his name. I doubt it. That's a 6-foot wooden fence, and Dodger's overweight and had knee surgery about a month ago. He would have to have scaled it, killed the cat, and then climbed back into the yard without anyone noticing, which seems unlikely since he mostly lives on the couch. Also, he's afraid of the vacuum cleaner. I took comfort in the solid conviction that however menacing a Rottweiler might look, Dodger was 100 pounds of neurotic mess, utterly incapable of violence of any kind. I picked my way through the grass as it got patchy in the shade. The children advanced slightly behind me. A roughly spherical mess of fur and jutting limbs that had at some point in the recent past been a cat was just under the window on the side of the house. It looked like it had been hit by a car. How it had ended up in my yard was anybody's guess. What was left of the cat's fur was identifiable as Fiona, the beloved calico of the 2 little Dennis girls from across the street. Bud and Kimberly Dennis, who were out of town for the weekend, were computer scientists from some comically named Texas town, had impossibly twangy accents, and were boisterously friendly. Despite their techie jobs, they looked and sounded like rednecks straight out of Central Casting. Almost daily near sunset, they backed one Mercedes sedan and one Ford F-150 out of the driveway, carried chairs and a boombox outside, and drank Lone Star beer and sang along to country music. The neighbors eventually wandered over. Bud's signature greeting was, "What's up, country?" Everyone loved them. Now their cat was decomposing stinkily in my yard. "Okay, kids, you can go now. I'll take care of this. Shoo." "Aw!" Liam, apparently unbothered by stench and maggots, looked disappointed that he would not be able to do whatever he had planned with the plastic wrap. The kid cluster dispersed. I returned to the reeking mess. This was not going to endear me to the neighbors. It was bad enough that I'd come from California. Now decent people's pets were turning up dead in my yard. I considered my limited options. The little girls would want to bury Fiona, but I knew that the Dennises wouldn't be back until Monday. Store the body in my freezer, maybe? I imagined trying to effect some kind of comforting facial expression while ringing their doorbell Tuesday morning, frozen cat in hand. No. The heat was miserable and only getting worse. The body would have to be dispatched immediately, buried deeply enough that local wildlife couldn't exhume it and, with my luck, drag it back to my yard. I went back inside. "What the hell?" Ted asked. I slid open the side window and said, "Check this out." "Holy Mother of God," he whispered. There was no time to go upstairs for a change of clothes. I pulled on some red running shorts out of the dryer and put them on over my swimsuit. I grabbed a pair of yellow dishwashing gloves and picked a couple of plastic grocery bags out of the recycling bin. I got a shovel from the garage. The only shoes downstairs were frog-themed rain boots. I marched back out the front door and, creating a strategy on the fly, quickly double-bagged the surprisingly heavy cat, knotting the handles tightly. 2 houses west of ours, the street angled downhill and ended in a perpendicular road. Just behind the houses on that road was a ravine. When there was rain, the sound and smell of water indicated a stream obscured by spindly trees. But most of the time it was just wet enough for optimal bug breeding. I remembered a vacant lot along the row of houses. Judging from the recent appearance of a pile of immaculate sand, new home construction was imminent. Physical evidence of the whole episode would be paved over. Perfect. With the double-bagged cat in my gloved left hand and the shovel in my right, I started down the hill. When I reached the lot, I took a quick inventory. It was covered in some recently cropped weedy scrub, and that pyramid of clean sand was really tall, maybe 6 or 7 feet high. There were houses on either side of the lot, and the back end dropped off toward the ravine and the top halves of the skinny trees. I decided to dig Fiona's grave in the middle of the lot, where it would surely be covered when the builders poured the foundation. I walked to the spot, swatting and dodging swarms of buzzing pests, put down the bagged cat, and put all of my weight into my first shovel strike. The clash of metal and rock reverberated up my spine and through my teeth. I picked up the cat and relocated. I tried again in different parts of the lot, but never got farther down than about 6 inches. Our lush green master planned community was built on a thin layer of topsoil, apparently imported, barely covering impenetrable rock. I could hear thunder in the distance. Rain would be a blessed relief, but if it started before I got rid of that cat, I might die of self-pity. I turned and squinted at the construction sand. Here was the clear path of least resistance. Shoving the bag of cat into the side of that soft sand would be the easiest thing I'd done in a long time. I stepped onto the bottom edge of the pile, and tiny white avalanches poured down like sugar. But there was no way it could work. Kids had seen me with the cat. I would surely be exposed, and being the kind of person who'd done an amateurish job of hiding a dead pet's carcass was even worse than being the person who'd found her in her yard in the first place. And imagine some poor construction worker discovering what would soon be unspeakable horror in the pristine sand. The greenish clouds were getting darker, and I was beginning to feel drops of water in the wind. I wiped my sweaty face awkwardly on my upper arm. The ravine. I could lift the bags by the handles and give it a toss. If it cleared the trees, gravity would do the rest. Maybe a sudden rain would make the bottom of the ravine into a river that would wash the carcass so far away that it wouldn't be anyone's problem anymore. I laid down my shovel, hoisted up the bag, and stepped as close to the back edge of the lot as I could before the bugs and scrub got too thick. I swung the bag in the direction of the ravine and let it go. It dropped about 4 feet from where I stood with a wet thud. Mercifully, the plastic grocery bags had not burst on impact. I gingerly lifted the handles and nothing fell out. Cool. I extended my arms, took a deep breath, and focused. I spun in a full circle like an Olympic hammer thrower. I swung upwards and let go. The cat flew. I stood listening as the airborne lump brushed the trees and crunched along the ground until I couldn't hear it anymore. I remember feeling pretty good as I walked back up the hill toward home. New appreciation of cooling rain in the absence of a heavy bag of decomposing cat. I looked down at my ensemble: swimsuit, red shorts, green rain boots with bulging cartoon frog eyes, yellow gloves. I looked like some kind of crazy superhero. A gust of wind blew my hair up around my head. I raised my shovel and laughed. The madwoman of suburbia, supermom.